A broken woman said, "I've never shared a bed. What the cowboy did changed her life." Alara Kincaid stared at the endless dunes of Solara 9, feeling the same emptiness she had carried for years. The desert planet was harsh, its twin suns relentless in their heat, and the red sand stretched as far as the eye could see. Yet, for Alara, it was perfect. Alone, she could hide from the world that had betrayed her, the colleagues who had abandoned her, and the life that had once promised so much. Her small habitat sat at the edge of the colony, a self-contained module with solar panels, water recyclers, and a greenhouse that produced just enough food for her. She moved through her daily routines with precision, checking the oxygen filters, monitoring the greenhouse, and reviewing data from her research on the local flora. The solitude that had once felt suffocating now offered her control. She could live her life quietly without expectations or interruptions. But today, the solitude felt different. A distant rumble reached her ears, not the wind, not the sand shifting, but the deep, steady thrum of a ship's engines. She froze, gripping the edge of her workstation. Visitors were rare on Solara 9. Supplies arrived every few months via the colony's transport network, but no one came unannounced. Her sensors picked up a single landing craft descending toward the colony. She frowned, her instincts urging caution. It wasn't the usual delivery freighter. This craft moved faster, more purposefully. Moments later, the hatch hissed open and a figure emerged. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a dusted brown jacket that spoke of long travel. His boots sank slightly into the sand as he walked toward her habitat with ease, a confident stride that suggested he belonged wherever he went. Alara stepped out cautiously. "Can I help you?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral. The man tilted his head, a small smile breaking across his sun-browned face. "Name's Riker Hale. I fix things, ships, generators, whatever's broken. Heard you might need some help." Alara's brow furrowed. "I don't need help. I can manage." "I didn't say you did," he said, his voice calm. "But sometimes even the best of us need a hand. Storms come, systems fail, and people get stuck. That's all." Something about his words made Alara tense. She wasn't used to this, someone approaching her without authority, without an agenda, without judgment. Normally, she would have refused contact, but there was something practical in his presence that she couldn't ignore. "I'm Dr. Kincaid," she said finally. "What brings you here? You're not a supply runner," he chuckled softly. "Not today. Got a message from the colony leaders. Said your habitat's life support system might need inspection. Seems the last maintenance drone reported some anomalies." Alara clenched her jaw. She hadn't requested an inspection. She didn't trust anyone to handle her systems. She had built them herself. But she couldn't deny that a professional's touch might save her weeks of repairs. She sighed. "Fine, you can take a look, but don't touch anything without asking." Riker nodded. "Fair enough. I like a woman who sets boundaries." Over the next few hours, Riker moved around her habitat with efficiency. He tested the oxygen filters, ran diagnostics on the solar arrays, and calibrated the water recycler. All the while, Alara observed him silently. She noticed the way he worked, steady, deliberate, careful. There was a quiet confidence in his movements, a respect for the systems and, surprisingly, for her space. "You've done a good job here," he said finally, wiping his hands on a rag. "Most colonists leave things half-finished or hack together solutions that barely work. You built this place like a fortress." Alara felt a flicker of pride, quickly buried beneath years of doubt. "It's all functional, that's all that matters." Riker leaned against a console, arms crossed. "Functional is good, but sometimes people forget that a home is more than just functional. It's where you recharge, where you live, where you feel safe." Alara stiffened. She wasn't used to hearing such words. She had long since stopped thinking of her habitat as a home. It was a shell, a place to survive, not to feel. Yet, for some reason, she didn't want him to be wrong. The afternoon faded, and the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the red sands. Alara watched the light change, painting the dunes in shades of gold and crimson. Riker was outside checking the solar panels when she finally spoke. "Why do you help people you don't know?" she asked, her voice quieter than intended. He looked up at her, brushing sweat from his forehead. "Because someone helped me once. Out here, you don't survive alone. And maybe because I like seeing people get a chance to shine. Even if they don't know it yet." Alara frowned. "Shine." "Yeah," he said, climbing down from the panel. "Humans have a strange ability. We adapt, survive, fight, build, protect. Even in the harshest places, we make things work. I've seen it over and over. And I think you've got it too." She wanted to dismiss his words, but they lingered like a spark in dry grass. For the first time in years, she wondered if she was really alone. That night a strange wind swept across Solara 9, kicking up red dust that rattled the walls of her habitat. Alara lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling panels, unable to sleep. Riker's presence, calm and steady, was an unfamiliar weight beside her routines. Normally, she would have dismissed him entirely by now, but something about his competence, his respect, and his quiet admiration gnawed at her defenses. A sudden beep from the life support system drew her attention. Riker had left it running through the night, monitoring the filters and pressure levels. She realized she hadn't expected him to care so much about the work she had poured her life into. That small act, simply caring, was enough to unsettle her. By morning, the sun rose again, harsh and brilliant, and Riker was already outside checking the panels. Alara stepped out to greet him, carrying a cup of recycled water. "Morning," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. "You did good work yesterday." He accepted the cup with a smile. "Thanks, but the real work starts now. You're not exactly in the safest place in the galaxy. Storms, dust devils, and the occasional scavenger ship are always a risk." Alara nodded. "I know." Riker's gaze lingered on her for a moment. "Do you really?" he asked gently. "Or have you just been surviving, hiding, keeping yourself broken?" The question hit her harder than she expected. She looked away, staring at the dunes. Her heart ached with memories she had buried deep. Her old research team abandoning her during a critical mission, the friends she had trusted, the mistakes she had made. She had built walls, routines, and isolation to keep the pain out. But Riker's words touched a part of her she hadn't acknowledged in years. "I've been careful," she said finally, her voice small. "That's all." "Careful isn't the same as safe," he said. "And it's not the same as living. You've got potential, Alara. The kind that changes things, helps people, makes life better. Don't waste it just hiding from the world." She stared at him, not knowing how to respond. His words weren't forceful, they weren't commands. They were an invitation, a chance to trust, to engage, to live again. And for reasons she didn't fully understand, she wanted to take it. The next few days passed in a rhythm that was unfamiliar but oddly comforting. Riker worked on repairs outside, while Alara continued her research inside. Sometimes he would bring her tools, sometimes he would offer advice, and sometimes they would sit quietly, watching the twin suns set behind the dunes, saying nothing at all. For the first time in years, Alara allowed herself to feel a faint sense of hope. The loneliness that had defined her existence was beginning to fracture, replaced by the possibility of connection, of shared purpose, of someone who saw her for more than just the walls she had built. Riker, the wandering cowboy of the frontier, had arrived without warning, bringing more than his tools and skills. He brought recognition, respect, and the quiet, steady light of human resilience. And though she didn't yet fully trust him, Alara sensed that her life might never be the same. As night fell on Solara 9, the red sands glimmering under twin moons, Alara closed her eyes for the first time in years and allowed herself to imagine a future beyond isolation. A future where she could survive, yes, but also live, thrive, and maybe, just maybe, trust again. And so, the broken woman who had sworn she would never open herself to anyone began, slowly, to rebuild. The morning sun beat down fiercely on Solara 9, sending heat waves rippling across the red dunes. Alara Kincaid was already awake, inspecting her greenhouse and checking the nutrient levels in the water system. It had become a routine that kept her grounded, even when her mind wandered to memories she tried to forget. Outside, Riker Hale was working on the solar panels. He moved with a confidence born of experience, his hands steady as he tightened connections and replaced worn components. The wind carried fine red dust that coated his boots, and Alara couldn't help noticing the ease with which he adapted to this harsh frontier world. "Looks like a storm might be coming," Riker called over, shading his eyes. Alara glanced up at the sky. Dark clouds were gathering on the horizon, dust clouds, but unusually large, moving fast. On Solara 9, storms weren't uncommon, but this one had an unpredictable energy signature. "We should secure the greenhouse," she said, grabbing her toolkit. "It's the only source of fresh food here." Riker nodded, and together they worked to reinforce the glass panels and tighten the structure. Alara was surprised by how naturally they coordinated, even though they had only met a few days ago. "You work well under pressure," Riker said as he held a beam in place. Alara didn't answer immediately, focusing on securing the panels. She didn't usually welcome praise, but something about his observation felt honest. He didn't flatter, he simply recognized competence. The storm hit harder than they expected. Winds whipped across the dunes, sending clouds of red dust spiraling into the sky. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and the temperature plummeted as the sun disappeared behind the massive dust cloud. "Back inside," Riker shouted, guiding Alara toward the habitat. The wind lashed against them, trying to push them off balance. Once inside, they quickly sealed the habitat, locking the airlocks and checking the life support systems. "This is worse than I thought," Alara said, watching the sensors spike with wind and dust readings. Riker leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. "Looks like we're stuck here until it passes. Might be a few days." Alara's heart sank. She had planned for solitude, not company. She wanted to retreat into her routines, but she couldn't deny that Riker's presence was reassuring. The first night of the storm was tense. The winds howled, shaking the walls and rattling the equipment. Alara stayed near the controls, monitoring oxygen levels and structural integrity. Riker sat quietly nearby, reading from a small tablet. He didn't try to engage her in idle conversation, respecting the space she clearly valued. "I've been through storms like this before," he said eventually. "You'd be surprised how much you learn about people when you're trapped with them." Alara glanced at him, frowning. "I prefer my company to be reliable, predictable, not surprising," he smiled faintly. "Fair enough. But sometimes the unpredictable is exactly what you need." She didn't reply. Instead, she returned to her monitoring, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that she wasn't entirely alone, and that maybe it wasn't so bad. By the second day, the storm had intensified. Dust had filled every small crack, and the temperature fluctuated wildly. They had enough food, but the greenhouse needed constant attention. Alara realized she couldn't handle it all alone, no matter how strong or capable she was. "Pass me the nutrient kit," she said, breaking the silence. Riker handed it over, his hand steady. "You really know your plants," he observed. "I have to," Alara said, focusing on the delicate adjustments. "They're the only source of fresh food. If I mess up, we all starve." Riker nodded, impressed. "Humans are good at surviving," he said. "We adapt, we build, we endure, even when the odds are against us." Alara felt a small spark of pride, though she quickly buried it. She didn't usually like reminders of her humanity. She preferred to think of herself as alone but capable. Yet, Riker's words weren't boastful, they were factual. He believed in her abilities, even when she had doubted them herself. By the third day, the storm showed no signs of letting up. The power systems were holding, but barely. Alara had been running continuous checks, and Riker had assisted in making minor adjustments to keep the habitat stable. "I think we should reinforce the backup generator," Riker suggested, "just in case." Alara hesitated. She had done all the maintenance herself and didn't like outsiders meddling with her systems, but she couldn't deny that having Riker's expertise was valuable. She gave a small nod. "Do it." Together, they worked on the generator, tightening bolts, replacing worn circuits, and running diagnostics. The hours passed quickly, filled with technical work and quiet cooperation. For the first time in years, Alara felt a sense of partnership. "You make a good team," Riker said after a while, wiping sweat from his brow. "We do what we have to do," Alara replied, avoiding his gaze. Riker didn't press further, but she could feel his approval. It was subtle, but it mattered. On the fourth day, a warning signal blared from the colony's communications array. The storm had disrupted the network, and now an unusual energy signature was approaching Solara 9. "What is it?" Alara asked, her hands flying over the controls. "Not sure," Riker said, analyzing the data. "Could be a scavenger ship or something else." Alara's stomach tightened. They were vulnerable. The storm had isolated them, and any visitors could be dangerous. She felt a pang of fear, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. Riker noticed and placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "We've handled worse. Together we can manage this too." Alara swallowed, appreciating his calm confidence. She nodded. "You're right, we need a plan." They quickly reviewed the habitat's defenses. Turrets, shields, and automated drones were all functional, but they would need careful coordination to repel any intrusion. Alara felt a rush of adrenaline. This was the kind of challenge she had always avoided, but now, facing it with Riker, she felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. The approach of the energy signature became clearer by evening. A small spacecraft appeared through the dust, its hull gleaming even in the storm. It wasn't hostile yet, but the potential for danger was high. Riker's eyes narrowed. "We need to be ready." Alara agreed, her mind racing. She activated the defensive systems, running simulations and coordinating with Riker on potential strategies. They worked seamlessly, communicating through gestures and brief commands, each anticipating the other's actions. In that moment, Alara realized something important. She hadn't known how much she had relied on her solitude. It had been protective, but it had also limited her potential. With Riker, she felt capable in ways she hadn't imagined. They were stronger together, combining knowledge, skill, and courage. The spacecraft finally settled near the colony. A hatch opened, but no immediate threat emerged. Still, the tension remained high. They couldn't let their guard down even for a moment. Riker glanced at her. "Ready?" Alara took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Ready." The storm raged around them, but inside the habitat, a quiet transformation had begun. Alara was no longer just the broken woman who isolated herself. She was a survivor, a strategist, a partner. And Riker, with his calm competence and unwavering belief in human resilience, had become more than just a visitor. He was a catalyst for change. By the time the storm began to subside, they had established a temporary safe perimeter and prepared for any potential encounters with the approaching ship. Alara felt something she hadn't in years: anticipation. Not fear, not dread, but the thrilling knowledge that she could face whatever came next, and that she wouldn't face it alone. As the twin suns set once more, painting the red sands in golden light, Alara looked at Riker. He was adjusting one of the defensive turrets, completely focused, yet she could feel the quiet strength radiating from him. She felt a small smile tug at her lips. For the first time, the isolation that had defined her life seemed like a distant memory. The storm had arrived uninvited, bringing chaos and uncertainty, but also opportunity. Opportunity to grow, to trust, and to discover that even in the harshest worlds, humans could not only survive, they could thrive. And with Riker by her side, Alara realized that life on Solara 9 might finally be worth living. The storm had passed, leaving Solara 9 red dunes bathed in a harsh, bright light. Dust still clung to the edges of Alara's habitat, and the air carried the dry, metallic scent of disturbed sand. For the first time in days, she stepped outside and took a deep breath, feeling both relief and tension. The storm had been a test, but now another challenge approached, one she hadn't anticipated. Riker Hale was already outside, inspecting the perimeter. His eyes scanned the horizon, searching for anything unusual. "Storm's gone, but that energy signature we detected earlier, it's moving closer," he said without looking up. Alara's stomach tightened. "How close?" "Too close to ignore. Could be a ship or something else," Riker said, adjusting the makeshift binoculars he carried. "We need to prepare." Alara nodded, and together they began fortifying the habitat. The storm had damaged some outer sensors, and the shields had to be reinforced. They worked in silence, each movement precise and efficient, the rhythm of teamwork slowly replacing the tension in the air. By mid-afternoon, the source of the energy signature revealed itself. A sleek, angular ship hovered over the dunes, its hull dark and polished, reflecting the twin suns. Alara's heart raced. It was larger than any supply craft, and its design spoke of advanced technology, likely military in origin. "They're not here for supplies," Alara said, voice tight. Riker didn't reply immediately. He crouched beside one of the defensive turrets, checking the ammo and systems. "Definitely not. Looks like they want control of the colony's resources. Solara 9 energy reserves are rare. Whoever controls them controls a lot." Alara's hands clenched into fists. Her research and the colony's survival were now in danger, but fear was replaced quickly by resolve. She had faced isolation, storms, and her own doubts, and she could not let the colony fall. The alien ship descended slowly, hovering just beyond range of the habitat's defensive shields. A hatch opened, and a small team of armored figures disembarked, their suits reflecting the sunlight. They were mercenaries, efficient, intimidating, and clearly trained for combat. Alara stepped back, assessing the situation. "We can't outrun them," she said quietly, "but we can outsmart them." Riker nodded. "Exactly. They rely on strength and tech. We have home advantage, traps, and human ingenuity. Let's make them regret underestimating us." For hours, they worked together, turning the habitat into a defensive stronghold. Alara used her knowledge of the terrain to set traps around the perimeter, rigging sand pits and automated turrets to respond to intruders. Riker reinforced shields and recalibrated defensive drones to maximize efficiency. It was grueling work, but each challenge strengthened their partnership. Alara began to see Riker not just as a companion, but as an equal, someone who respected her skills and added his own, making them a team capable of facing even the most formidable threats. As the sun began to set, the first mercenary scout approached. It moved cautiously, unaware of the traps laid in the shifting dunes. "Patience," Riker whispered. "Let them come to us." The scout stepped on a hidden pressure plate. A small trap triggered, sending a cloud of sand into the air and knocking the figure off balance. Riker grinned. "That's one down. Keep watching." Alara watched, her heart pounding. She felt a thrill she hadn't experienced in years, the rush of defending, of using her mind to anticipate every move. HFY shone through in her actions. Humans weren't the strongest, but their creativity, adaptability, and courage gave them an edge. The rest of the mercenary team advanced cautiously, but every step they took was anticipated. Drones buzzed overhead, automated turrets fired non-lethal energy pulses that disabled their systems temporarily, and sand traps slowed their progress. The humans were proving that brains and strategy could outmatch superior firepower. Hours passed. The sun disappeared, and the colony became a battlefield lit by blinking sensors and energy pulses. Riker and Alara worked side by side, communicating silently with gestures and brief commands. Each moment tested their coordination, their skill, and their trust in one another. During a brief pause, Alara caught her breath and glanced at Riker. "I never thought I'd enjoy this defending a colony, but somehow it feels right." Riker gave a small smile. "That's humans for you, adaptable, persistent. We don't give up easily and we don't back down. Even in the harshest worlds, we fight. And you're showing it every step of the way." Alara felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years. The broken woman from before, the one who had hidden from life, was slowly being replaced by someone stronger, someone capable of leading and surviving. By nightfall, the mercenaries regrouped, realizing that brute force alone wouldn't overcome the humans' defenses. They called for reinforcements, but the distance and harsh desert conditions slowed them. Alara and Riker used the darkness to their advantage. They coordinated silent attacks, luring small groups into sand traps and disabling drones before they could regroup. HFY shone in the humans' creativity. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but never outsmarted. At one point, Alara climbed a dune to get a better view. She spotted the mercenary commander coordinating the attacks. She whispered to Riker, pointing, "We need to isolate the leader. If we take them out, the rest will retreat." Riker nodded. "I'll handle it. You cover me." With precise coordination, Riker moved through the dunes, using shadows and terrain to approach the commander. Alara triggered a trap that funneled the enemies into a confined area. In moments, the leader was surrounded and incapacitated by non-lethal energy restraints. The remaining mercenaries hesitated, then retreated toward their ship. HFY once again proved itself. Humans, small in number but brilliant in strategy, had turned the tide against a superior enemy. After the battle, Alara and Riker surveyed the scene. The colony was battered, but the systems were intact, and the mercenaries had been repelled. For the first time in years, Alara felt a sense of pride, not just in herself but in humanity. "You were amazing," Riker said, clapping her on the shoulder. "I didn't doubt it for a second, but still, seeing you in action, incredible." Alara shook her head, smiling faintly. "We did it together. I couldn't have done it without you," Riker grinned. "That's what humans do. We survive, we fight, we adapt, and we never give up. You've got it in you, Alara. You really do." She felt a spark of hope and confidence. The broken woman of yesterday had fought, survived, and proven that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. That night, under Solara 9 twin moons, the colony settled into an uneasy calm. Alara walked outside, feeling the cool night air on her skin. The dunes glimmered softly and the stars above sparkled like scattered diamonds. Riker joined her, offering a simple nod of acknowledgement. They didn't need words. The trust and respect between them were clear. "You think the mercenaries will return?" Alara asked. "Maybe," Riker replied, "but if they do, we'll be ready. Humans always are." Alara nodded, feeling the truth of his words. Humans were resilient, resourceful, and brave. And she was part of that strength now, not just surviving but thriving, capable of facing whatever challenges came her way. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. The broken woman who had isolated herself was gone. In her place stood someone strong, capable, and alive, a human who could rise to any challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed. As the night deepened, she realized that Solara 9 wasn't just a place to hide anymore. It was a place to grow, to fight, and to prove that humans, even alone on the edge of the galaxy, could triumph. And with Riker by her side, she knew that whatever came next, storms, enemies, or the vast unknown of space, they would face it together. The twin suns rose slowly, but their light did not bring warmth or peace. The air was tense, heavy with the feeling that something bad was coming. Alara Kincaid stood on a high ridge near the colony, scanning the horizon through a handheld scope. Her heart beat steadily, not with fear but with focus. "They're coming back," she said. Riker Hale stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes sharp. He did not ask how she knew. He trusted her instincts now. "How many?" he asked. Alara adjusted the scope. "More than before, 2 ships, heavier armor. They learned from last time." Riker exhaled slowly. "Then this won't be a warning attack. This is the real one." Below them, the colony lay quiet. Small habitat domes, power towers, water units, and defense turrets formed a fragile line against the endless red desert. It was not a military base. It was a home. And Alara would not let it fall. Inside the command hub, Alara stood before the colony's main display. Colonists gathered around her, engineers, farmers, technicians, people who had never planned to fight anyone. Their faces showed fear but also trust. She noticed that. And it changed something inside her. "We don't have stronger weapons than them," Alara said calmly. "We don't have more ships, but we have something better." She paused, meeting their eyes. "We know this world. We built this colony, and we are human." Riker leaned against the wall, watching her. The broken woman he had met weeks ago was gone. In her place stood a leader. "They think we are weak because we are few," Alara continued. "They think we will panic. We won't. We will adapt. We will outthink them." She tapped the display, showing the terrain map. "We will not meet them in open ground. We will divide them, slow them, confuse them. Every step they take will cost them time and energy." A murmur moved through the room. "You all know your systems better than anyone," she said. "That knowledge is our weapon." One by one, heads nodded. Riker smiled slightly. Humans always surprised themselves when it mattered most. The first enemy ship descended just beyond the outer dunes. The second followed, heavier and slower, clearly a command vessel. Alara's voice echoed through the colony's communication system. "All units to defense positions. Activate Phase 1. Automated turrets powered up but did not fire. The mercenaries advanced carefully, expecting resistance. What they did not expect was silence. No shots. No alarms. Only the desert. Then the ground shifted. A section of sand collapsed beneath their vehicles, swallowing 2 heavy units into a hidden trench. Energy nets activated, locking their systems. Before they could react, drones rose from behind rocky outcrops, projecting false signals across the battlefield. Their scanners went blind. Inside the command hub, Alara's hands moved quickly across the console. "Phase 2, she said. Power towers redirected energy, overloading the enemy's sensor arrays. Communications between mercenary squads broke down. They were no longer an army. They were confused groups in hostile territory. Riker moved with a small strike team along the colony's edge, disabling units that strayed too close. He did not rush. He waited. He struck only when needed. That was the human way. The mercenaries adapted quickly. They always did. They changed tactics, deploying aerial units to scan from above. "Air units incoming," Riker reported. Alara's jaw tightened. "I see them." She activated a system she had designed years ago but never expected to use. The colony's water processors vented supercooled vapor into the air. The vapor crystallized instantly, forming dense clouds that confused thermal sensors. The enemy air units flew straight into them. One by one, they lost control and crashed harmlessly into the dunes. Riker let out a short laugh. "Remind me never to underestimate a scientist." Alara did not smile. She was already planning the next move. Then the second ship moved. The command vessel powered its main cannon. "That's not good," Riker said quietly. Alara stared at the display. If that cannon fired, the colony would not survive. She took a breath. "Redirect all remaining power to the shield grid," she ordered, "even the greenhouse." A technician hesitated. "Dr. Kincaid, if we do that—" "I know," Alara said firmly. "Do it." The shield flared to life, brighter than ever before. The cannon fired. Energy slammed into the shield like a falling star. The colony shook. Consoles sparked. Lights flickered, but the shield held. Barely. Alara gripped the edge of the console, breathing hard. "We can't take another hit like that," Riker said. "No," she agreed, "so we won't." She zoomed the display, focusing on the command ship's power cycle. "There," she said, "there's a delay after firing, 6 seconds." Riker's eyes widened. "That's enough." "For a human," Alara said. Riker took a small team and moved fast, using terrain and cover. They raced toward a high ridge directly above the command ship. Enemy fire chased them, but Alara fed Riker constant updates, guiding him through blind spots and sensor gaps. "Now," she said, Riker launched the device. It was not a bomb, it was worse. A human-made logic virus transmitted through a focused energy pulse. It slipped into the ship's systems during the firing cooldown. Inside the command ship, systems began to argue with each other. Power grids rerouted incorrectly, weapon safeties locked, navigation failed, the ship drifted helpless. The remaining mercenaries froze. Without orders, without coordination, they hesitated. Alara did not hesitate. "All units," she said into the comms. "Advance." The colonists moved not recklessly but with purpose. Defense drones surged forward, herding mercenary units away from the colony and toward the open desert. Some surrendered, some fled, none advanced. When the dust finally settled, the desert was quiet again. The command ship lay powerless, half buried in sand. The mercenaries were gone, the colony still stood. Alara stepped outside, her legs shaky now that the danger had passed. The sky was clear. The suns were high. She had done it. Riker walked up beside her, dust-covered and tired but smiling. "You saved everyone," he said. Alara shook her head slowly. "We saved ourselves." Riker studied her. "You know, when I first met you, you were hiding from the world." She looked at the colony, at the people already repairing damage, helping each other, laughing with relief. "I was afraid," she said honestly. "And now," she thought for a moment, "now I know who I am." Riker nodded. That answer was enough. That night the colony gathered under the stars. Lights were low to save power, but spirits were high. Food was shared. Stories were told. Alara stood slightly apart, watching. She felt different, not empty, not broken, just human. Riker joined her, handing her a cup of warm drink. "You did good, leader," he said. She smiled softly. "I had help." He raised his cup. "That's the human way." Above them, the stars burned bright. And on the edge of the galaxy, a small human colony proved once again that humans did not need to be the strongest, only the smartest, only the bravest, only willing to stand. The first light of Solara 9 twin suns spilled across the dunes. The red sands glimmered softly, and the sky burned in shades of gold and violet. The colony had survived. The mercenaries were gone. The storms had passed. And yet, for Alara Kincaid, the morning felt like something more than survival. It felt like a beginning. She stepped outside her habitat, breathing in the dry, crisp air. For the first time in years, she did not feel the weight of isolation pressing on her. The colony was alive with activity. Colonists repairing systems, tending to greenhouses, and helping one another. They moved with a quiet pride, their actions reflecting courage, resourcefulness, and teamwork. Riker Hale joined her at the ridge overlooking the colony. He was dust-covered, tired, but unbroken. The battle from the previous day had tested them both, and yet they stood undefeated. "You did well," Riker said quietly, his gaze on the activity below. Alara shook her head. "We did well, all of us." Riker smiled. "Humans always surprise me. Even when the odds are against us, we adapt. We survive. We protect what matters, and we do it together." Alara thought about his words. She had always believed strength was solitary, that she had to face life alone. Now she realized the truth. Strength was human, but stronger when shared. Inside the command hub, Alara moved among the colonists. She checked systems, helped coordinate repairs, and offered guidance. Her leadership was no longer hesitant or cautious. It was confident, calm, and inspiring. People listened not out of fear but because she earned their trust. A young engineer approached her, holding a damaged sensor unit. "Dr. Kincaid, we can fix this, but we'll need extra materials. The storm and battle damaged a lot." Alara examined the unit. "We'll make do," she said firmly. "We always find a way. Humans are good at making the impossible possible." The engineer nodded, inspired. He returned to his work, renewed determination in his steps. Outside, the desert had regained its deceptive calm. The sand stretched endlessly, quiet and still, but Alara knew better. The world was harsh and Solara 9 was unforgiving. Yet she also knew humans could thrive here. They had proven it. They had faced storms, attacks, and isolation, and emerged victorious. Riker joined her again, holding a small device he had repaired. "This will help improve communications," he said. "The colony will be safer, more connected." Alara nodded, taking the device. "Every improvement matters. Every effort counts." Riker studied her. "You've changed, Alara. The person who hid behind walls, she's gone. Now you lead, you fight, you inspire." She felt warmth in his words. "I had to, not just for me, for everyone here, and for myself." Days passed. The colony repaired itself, stronger and more resilient than before. Systems were upgraded, shields were reinforced, turrets were fine-tuned. The greenhouse flourished, producing more food than ever. Alara worked tirelessly but differently. She did not isolate herself. She delegated, guided, and encouraged. She watched the colonists grow just as she was growing herself. Riker remained a constant presence, not controlling, not overshadowing, but supporting. They moved together like two halves of a whole, her intelligence and strategy, his skill and experience. Together, they had become a team capable of anything. One evening, after a long day, they walked along a ridge overlooking the colony. The twin moons rose in the sky, casting silver light over the dunes. "I never thought I'd be here like this," Alara said quietly. "Here like what?" Riker asked. "Alive, free, part of something bigger than myself," she replied. "I spent so long hiding, so long thinking I could survive alone, but now I know humans are meant to thrive together." Riker looked at her, his eyes reflecting the moons above. "And you're living proof. You didn't just survive, you inspired. You reminded everyone that humans, even on the edge of the galaxy, are capable of greatness." Alara smiled, a genuine smile she hadn't worn in years. "Maybe that's what it means to be human, to keep going, to adapt, to rise even when everything seems impossible." Riker nodded. "Exactly." The next morning, a supply shuttle arrived from a distant colony. The new arrivals brought materials, equipment, and news from across the galaxy. Colonists exchanged greetings, shared stories, and offered help. Alara stood at the landing site, observing. She realized the colony had grown beyond her own fears. It had become a community, a symbol of human resilience, ingenuity, and cooperation. A young child approached her, holding a small device. "Dr. Kincaid, can you show me how this works?" Alara crouched to meet the child's gaze. "Of course, watch closely," she explained patiently, demonstrating the device's functions. The child's eyes lit up with excitement. Other children gathered, curious and eager to learn. Alara realized then that this was her true legacy. Not her research alone, not the battle they had won, but the hope she could give. The belief that humans, even in the harshest conditions, could create, innovate, and thrive. Riker watched her with quiet admiration. "You've built more than a colony," he said. "You've built a future." Alara looked out over the dunes. The red sand stretched endlessly, but for the first time they no longer felt empty. They were full of possibility. Weeks later, life had returned to a steady rhythm. Colonists worked, learned, and helped each other. The mercenary threat had vanished, their defeat a story told over and over, reminding everyone that human courage and ingenuity could overcome even the greatest odds. Alara moved through the colony with ease, checking systems, talking to engineers, and sharing laughter with those she had once only observed from a distance. She felt whole, alive, and connected. Riker joined her at the ridge once more, looking out over the colony. "You've come a long way," he said. "I have," Alara admitted. "But so has the colony, so has everyone here. We all grew stronger together." Riker smiled. "That's humans for you. We don't just survive, we adapt, we rise, and sometimes we even inspire each other." Alara laughed softly. "I used to think I had to face life alone. I was wrong. Humans are meant to face life together." The twin suns rose again, golden and bright. Alara felt their warmth on her face, and for the first time she truly believed in the future. In the following weeks, the colony thrived. Solar panels were expanded, water systems upgraded, and new research began on the planet's unique flora and resources. Colonists worked side by side, teaching, learning, and sharing. Alara became not just a leader, but a teacher and mentor. She shared her knowledge, trained new engineers, and inspired young minds to think creatively and courageously. Riker continued his role as protector and guide, helping to strengthen the colony's defenses, while also giving advice and encouragement. Together, they had formed a bond that went beyond survival. It was trust, respect, and shared purpose. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant red and gold, Alara walked alone along the ridge. She looked at the colony below and thought of the journey she had taken, from isolation and fear to leadership, courage, and connection. She realized that the broken woman she had once been no longer existed. She had been reforged, tempered by storms, danger, and human resilience. She had discovered that true strength came not from solitude, but from collaboration, trust, and the courage to face life fully. A soft voice called her name. "Alara," Riker stepped onto the ridge beside her. "You're thinking too much," she smiled. "Maybe, but it's good thinking. It's thinking about what humans can do, about what we can achieve." He nodded. "We can do a lot, and we will." Alara looked at the twin moons rising, then at the colony thriving in the desert. She felt a quiet joy, a deep satisfaction, and a sense of hope she had never imagined possible. Humans, she realized, were remarkable. Not because they were the strongest, the fastest, or the most powerful, but because they were clever, adaptable, brave, and unyielding. Even on a harsh, distant planet like Solara 9, they could thrive, protect, and grow. And she, Alara Kincaid, had found her place among them. The stars above sparkled like distant promises, and under their light, Alara and Riker stood together, ready for whatever the galaxy might bring next. Solara 9 was no longer just a colony. It was a symbol of human resilience, a testament to courage, a new dawn.